Yo, what's going on, guys? So today we're gonna be talking about Pilk, aka Milk Blooming Bunny. So first off, we're gonna look at her skills briefly, and then we're gonna take a look at some of the teammates, mostly peers, Nikkes, and then lastly we're gonna take a look at how she performs as compared to her colleagues. So without further ado, let's get into it. So first off, we have skill 1. She gains pierce for 6 seconds when she performs a full charge attack, and when a full charge lasts more than 0.5 seconds or more, she gains this embarrassment state. Now I don't even know if it is possible to have a lower than 0.5 second charge time. Even with about 15% charge speed bonus, she is doing about 1 second charge shots, so for the most part this will not be an issue. So when she performs a charge that lasts more than 0.5 seconds, she gains embarrassment, which makes her do a forced reload at a reduced reload speed, increasing attack capabilities and dealing distributed damage. It has actually 5 effects. So it has, the first effect is she deals 290% of her final attack as distributed damage, then removes 100% of her ammo, then she decreases her reload speed by 50% for 1 reload and forces that reload when this activates, and then the final effect is that she increases her attack by 118.7%, which is a lot. Now the second skill activates only when she is in embarrassment status, which is when she performs a charge shot that lasts more than 0.5 seconds from skill 1. And if she does that, she gains 64.7 pierce damage for the entire time that skill 1 is active. Now the second part of the skill is related to her burst. So it activates when she is in overconfident state, and it affects all enemies on screen, deals 447% of final attack as distributed damage. And moving on to her burst skill, she gains overconfident status, which cancels her embarrassment status from skill 1. So it cancels this pierce damage multiplier and cancels basically this entire skill from skill 1, and gives her pierce damage that is equal to 117% for 10 seconds and an attack buff of 220%, which I think is the highest single attack buff in the game. Maybe I'm wrong, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure it is, which is a very high attack multiplier. This basically more than triples her attack during her burst. So as far as overall lines regarding like attack and attack buffers, that might be a little bit diluted. However, it's still gonna be good, but maybe not as impactful as other units that do not have this much of a multiplier in their kit. So that's about it for the skills. Now let's take a look at some of the teams. So here are some of the teammates that I was testing her with. First off, we have Red Hood, who does pierce damage and is also an Iron Code, so is a comparable unit, somewhat in the same niche of a Iron pierce damage dealer with a sniper rifle. Also, the next one is Asuka, who does pierce damage. She's fire code, however in general she is used in pierce teams, so I thought that would also be a pretty good comparison. And then lastly we have a general, kind of a mid unit, Treasure Laplace here, that scales on general buffs for the most part, so I compared these. And then lastly I thought about comparing her against a very good distributed damage dealer, Scarlet Black Shadow here, with distributed damage buffers such as the Maid Duo, which we're gonna talk about now. We have the Maid Duos here for distributed damage, reload speed, attack, all those good stuff. Then we have Aid, the new unit for pierce damage buffing, which is a contender for Grave Spot, right? And as I tested last week, she is a little bit worse than Grave, as you would expect. Grave is a pilgrim unit, however she does quite well also, as you will see. And then we're pairing her with D for that pierce damage buff as well. And of course we got the Crown and Leader right here for the general buffers. So let's take a look how they performed with all of these units. Alright, here we have it. This is the numbers section. First up we have the Crown Leader Duo. The general buffers here, the Crown Leader. Here we have the Aid Leader, Grave, the Killer Wife, the Masked Anchor Duo, and then lastly the Milk SPS comparison. So first off we have the general buffers here. As expected, this is the highest numbers for both Milk and her teammate. And so the first team right here, you have Red Hood doing 819 million, while Milk did 707 million, so about 86% of Red Hood's damage, which is quite good in general. I mean, Red Hood is quite a good unit So, you know, doing 86% of her damage is quite respectable. And so in every team, she was within that 15 to 20% range from Red Hood, which is pretty good. As far as being compared to Asuka right here, Asuka did 650 million while Milk did 692 million, so about 106% of Asuka's damage. So Milk seems to be better than Asuka in terms of dealing damage, even in a generalist team. And then this difference gets even higher when you put her in teams that benefit Milk, such as Aid, for example, buffing more and more of that pierce damage. So it seems like Milk does more pierce damage than Asuka, right? So here in the pierce team, you have 111% of Asuka's damage, and then with Grave, it's even higher. It's 116% of Asuka's damage. So whenever deciding on a unit between Milk and Asuka with Grave for that pierce damage team, Milk seems to be better, and all of these numbers are in neutral settings, so there is no advantage based on element. And then lastly here with Mast and Anchor doing 120%, right? We're gonna talk about that in a second. So the last one right here with Laplace, Milk Laplace with the general crown leader, Laplace doing 766 million while Milk did 686, which comes out to about 89.5% of Laplace's damage. But as we move into the Pierce buffers, that difference gets less and less. And here with Grave, Milk actually starts to do more damage than Laplace, doing 108% of Laplace's damage. So it seems like Milk is about the strength of a Treasure Laplace, and a little bit weaker than Red Hood. And of course, Milk does not have the utility that Red Hood does, like the triple burst, the burst generation, the survivability on her own. In terms of damage though, she's fairly close to Red Hood. And then lastly, like I said, I wanted to test the Masked Anchor for distributed damage buffers with Red Hood, with Asuka, and with Laplace. Obviously, these units do not scale on distributed damage, so they fell off quite a lot here. So Milk was able to do a lot more damage, you know, as expected. This is not a surprise. However, what is interesting is that her personal damage is actually higher than these numbers right here, right? It's lower than when paired with Crown and Leader. However, she seems to be better with that distributed damage buff rather than the buff to her pierce damage, which I found quite interesting. I did not expect that. I thought she was gonna scale on pierce a little bit better than distributed damage, but it seems that is not the case. And then when you compare it to a unit that actually does distributed damage, she did not perform as good. However, you know, her personal damage did not change, but SBS is just much better, about 25% more damage here. And so Milk is definitely not broken or anything like that, but she is a pretty good contender for the Iron Code roster, and I believe she will see some use over time. And so if you want to use her, I would recommend going for investment on skill 1 to level 4, then going to on skill 2 for level 7, and then burst going to 10. Now, in my personal experience from my testing, skill 1 was pretty inconsequential, so I would leave it at 4. The difference was about 0.5 to 1% in my experience, upgrading it from 4 to 10. So I would not recommend really upgrading skill 1 all too much. Now for skill 2, the upgrade was about 7.5% damage increase, going from 7 to 10. So this is something that you might consider doing. And then the biggest buff to her damage was her burst skill, gaining about 14% or so, going from 7 to 10, and about 12% going from 4 to 7. So the damage gain on upgrading her burst skill is about twice as much as her skill 2. And then for her overload lines, you want the standard, elemental, and attack. Like I said, she has a lot of personal attack buffs. However, attack is still going to make a difference, so you want to go for some attack at least. And then for the last line, you want at least 1 roll of ammo, so she doesn't have to reload during her burst. With 1 roll, she has about 10 rounds of ammunition, which during her burst, she's able to pop off about 8 shots. So 1 roll should be enough. And then for the other ones, you want charge speed, so she's able to shoot faster and deal more damage. Alright, so there you have it. My final thoughts on Milk is that she is pretty decent. She is not a must pull or anything like that. And she is in the Pierce Nikkei group, which there is quite a few of them. But What sets her apart from most of them is that she has both pierce damage and distributed damage scaling, which is a quite unique combination. That is something that might set her apart from the other Nikkes in the upcoming patches and the releases of new enemies and stuff like that. But even if she doesn't, she is quite alright as she is now. As you saw, her performance was quite close to that of Red Hood, but without any of the extra utility that Red Hood provides. So personally, I'm going to rank her in the high A to S tier, not too shabby, so a decent unit to pick up if you're itching to pull, but don't be afraid to put her on the wishlist if you need to. With that said, let me know what you think of her performance, her design, and any other thoughts that you may have down in the comments. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.